You're on, Elisa.
Okay. Hi, my name is Elisa E., and I am a survivor of mind control. I was born in the early 60s. It appears that I was designed by a concerted effort group of government, military, intelligence, possibly even corporate. I know that there was corporate and religious use of me following that. My earliest memories are pre-verbal of being dissociative due to being unable to breathe. That was in the crib years. And then it goes from there into being 3 years old and being in some type of warehouse or facility with some men traumatizing someone in front of me and killing someone. And they were dressed in what I call Navy denims, which is, something that's actually an official clothing of Navy members. That was 1965. And then the memories go on sporadically through childhood, adult, or adolescent, teenage, adult years. I come from a family that on both sides has Navy connections. And on one side, he wasn't in an officer position, but he did have some clearance. He worked on a facility, not in the continental U.S. It was a U.S. base, and I don't want to name it, but did have some special clearance for the work he was involved in there. I spent most of my life having what I call bleed through. There were moments of somewhat of lucidity where I believe the highest part of me had a moment of awareness that things were not as they should be, things were untrue, that there was something, this feeling of something else is going on, and then I would slip back into a programmed state. I was created to be what they call MPD, which is multiple personality disorder. It's now DID, which I don't care for. It sounds so mellow. I feel like MPD is more accurate. And I have many, many, many alters. Most of those alters are what I call fragments, meaning they're partial personalities that can't really function in the world at large. They just were created and designed for very particular purposes and use. And then I have what I call full personalities that are very functioning in the world. If someone knew me really well and was aware of mind control and MPD, they could probably notice the changes when I was under full programming, not so much anymore. That doesn't really occur to my knowledge. But they were able to function in the world at large. My first programmer was my father. I believe there are several multiples in my family, if not all of the people in my immediate family, biological family, mother, 2 brothers, and a father. There were, I believe, other abusers within my family, and then many abusers and users, perpetrators outside of my family as the years went on. I recall very significant times of ritual abuse and programming throughout the years when I first began what I call deep deprogramming, which was started when I was 46. I began deprogramming on my own, which is kind of like being caught in a maze with mines all around you. While I was still being used, I was waking up in my early 30s, actually, for quite some years, about a dozen years or more, before I began what I call deep deprogramming. And the reason I call it deep deprogramming is that I was able to meet 2 men, and they listened to me for a couple of days, and then were able to say to me, "We not only believe you, but we've worked with people like you." And that began what I call deep deprogramming, in that for the first time, many of the alters within that had been trying to get my attention, meaning the person who was kind of the front personality, many of those alters started to be heard by me. I began to really believe what they had been trying to tell me for years and show me for years. And I want to say that as the front personality, or part of what I call a frontline system, there's actually a group of us that run on the front, but as the main frontline person, I was, I think, designed to be one of the strongest alters in my entire systems. I believe there's more than one, because I had to deal with pushing all of that down, and I had to deal with when things showed up in our physical reality, such as waking up with a broken hand or marks or partial memories. It was my job, per my programming, it was my job to push that all away and keep going, and to deny that that was a part of, our existence. So it was really big for me to have, I was starting to believe my alters, and to have people reinforce that this indeed does exist, and it was a concerted effort on the part of some of the aforementioned to design me, that I wasn't crazy. And at that point, the floodgates opened, is what I call it. The downloads, as I call them, which were my alters interacting with me and providing information, playing tapes of what they had lived through, with the emotion that they felt or didn't feel in some cases, some of the more dissociated and emotionless ones. But it really began 24/7 at that point. The bits and pieces turned into just a flood. And I got a tape recorder because it was, day and night, and sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and just record whatever came forward, even if it didn't make sense. And with enough time of doing that, writing things down, recording verbally, pieces began to fit together. It seemed very fragmented, but pieces began to fit together, and things began to make a lot of sense. Things from the past began to make sense, from childhood, adolescence, teenage years, and on. And with enough time, it's tricky to manage the deprogramming process, because it is an assault on many of us, and particularly me, the front. It was literally an assault, and I had a hard time with some of the stuff that came forward, with a lot of it. But with time, and calling upon what I call benevolent, unconditional, creative love, those 4 words, it's just a force of creative, benevolent energy that is stronger, more powerful, life-sustaining than anything that could work against me. And by continuing to call on that, to surround me, to infuse me, to protect me, to keep me going, to guide me, with time, I began to really be able to piece our lives together. I had, at that point at 46, had been missing years, and in one case, almost an entire decade of our life. I couldn't remember anything, and it just all began to flood forward. Ironically, in a very fragmented way, but with time, a pattern began to show up, and I could get a partial memory, and then maybe 6, 8, 10 months down the road, another alter would show me a part of that memory, that alter's experience of that memory, and things began to be pieced together. It was an amazing thing for me to witness and participate in. And it's been, how long has it been? 46? It's been 7 years. I still have a hard time with chronology. I have to think about time. And that's due, I think, a lot to the programming in use. Not only because things were missing, but to explain that a lot of my alters have no sense of time and chronology. There's only now for them. And so for me, it's always just moments of now. And so even when I regain chronology, it often falls back out of place. So I've made a practice of writing everything down and recording everything and speaking it so that it will sink in more. And that's gotten a lot better with the years of deprogramming. It appears as though there was, the words are, and this comes from one of my altars, is preconception design. And I know what that means. I mean, it means preconception. So I believe there was, from that, at this point, I can't prove that, but I believe it's such a strong feeling that that perhaps there was literally, conception design. I am certain that there were alterations genetically done at some point. I don't understand the process, but that there were enhancements, not only most likely in the womb, but I know there was a period from about 28 to 33 or 27 to 33 that is still majorly blocked for me. I have a really hard time accessing it, except that I know that at that point there was a very significant, quote, enhancement, end quote, done to me, and that it had to do with a particular use of my program skill base and alters. And it appears there are many, many uses for what I call high-level slaves, and I put myself in that category because, not because of who I am so much as because who used me and had access to me. They seems to be a rather high-profile group in a very covert way, but members of military, intelligence connections, government, executive branch government connections. There's certain religious organizations, as the Mormon LDS Church, and I'm talking about in the hierarchy there. I have memories of meeting a couple of the members, and I was being introduced to them and presented to a large group of people, and there was a high-level LDS member present at that meeting and introducing me to this 150 to somewhere between 150 to 200 people. I have strange memories of being in the Scientology international location in Clearwater, Florida, working there through a company that was supposedly providing maintenance on something, but I have flashes of memory and being in rooms that we would have no business being in that facility. So there was a really, and I believe there was some corporate use, meaning there were individuals that had associations with some of the high-level people that were involved either in my behind the scenes having me programmed or hands-on. So there were some corporate individuals that I would call them, people with a lot of money that seemed to have access to me. I've only recognized a couple people, and I don't know in what way I was utilized by them. I have a lot of fragmented memories of a lot of sexual access to me, either approved or otherwise, I don't know. And it seems, as I said, they're due to having so many alters and so many different programmed in skill base, it seems there are an awful lot of uses, and some of those may just be a fragmented part is used once or twice and then it's done, but there seem to be a lot of different uses. But what I call the two main uses were sex and killing. And that still brings up
Would you like to walk?
Yeah. And often those two program skills and alter skills were utilized together. Sometimes it would be one alter who was skilled in both the sex and the killing, and sometimes it would be one alter who was skilled sexually, and then a kill alter would be called up at some point during the encounter. Also, the alters were used to set people up where my alters weren't the ones that were the actual killers, or they were set up for some other reason, so that there's a partial memory of, you know, a sexual encounter, but no end for that person in our memory banks anyway. I have memories of being used solo with a handler overseeing. This was early. This was what I call the alpha, which was the first on-task kill for several altars were involved in the sex altars, followed by kill altars. That was at 18, meaning there was a handler present at the beginning of it. It was a casino setting, and I walk up and make contact with the target, but my handler is watching. And it's a very amazing replay for me, because my altar, bless her heart, was so connected to this person watching, and she knew she wasn't supposed to look at him very much. There's all these things that happened for her, but it's very clear that if someone had walked up to her and asked who this man was that was her handler, she wouldn't have been able to name him. And she goes to the target and he has code words and hand movements and a particular touch that he delivers code, and I switch at that point into another altar. And this was, I won't go through the whole thing, but this was the first, my understanding, it was the first on-task kill without the handler present, meaning we went, myself, or I should say we, the altars went in this body up to the room with the target, and the handler stayed downstairs. And that would start a very long and torturous decade of use as a killer for a variety of what I call organizations and agencies, alphabet soup agencies. It seems that a lot of my programming came through the CIA, and I believe that was the connection that brought me to the hierarchy of the LDS Church, that they're very much connected. Possibly FBI too. I have memories of FBI agents approaching me many years ago when I was younger in bars and so forth, and delivering messages that I didn't, in my front personality, understand. And then there's military intelligence, I believe, very much the Navy, Army officials, people that I've identified in hindsight without knowing their names and finding out, you know, doing the research to find out who they worked for and so forth. Army, I would know I was on military bases. I don't always know my location. In other words, when the altar would present their part of the memory, I was already inside or what have you, and didn't know my location. But in one case, I know that it was MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. I was born, I'll kind of backtrack, I was born in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Spent a handful of years there. I don't know what year we moved to Tennessee, and I know we lived in more than one location in Tennessee. And then in 1970 moved to Florida, and I believe all of those locations were in part due to our moving due to the need for programming in different sites. I spent most of my younger life in Florida, and had a lot of different handlers and so forth as of once I hit 18, 19 and began that kill use and a lot of sexual use. Then I go through most of my life in and out of Florida. I have fragmented memories of a variety of locations. I list them. I'll mention now that I have 2 books out titled Our Life Beyond MK Ultra, Book 1, and the same title, Book 2, by Elisa E. And I go into detail, a lot of detail. I took a cross-section of what I've remembered, what my altars have shown to me. And in Book 2, I get a lot more into updating the things in Book 1, as well as new revelations, and then a lot of the healing and the process I've used to deprogram, which will, in my opinion, be an ongoing, lifelong process. But I am now I would say, a collective of parts who wanted out, who have fought to get out, and who participate in maintaining that, and that is all led by what I call my highest self. It's a very, very strong, true part of me that has brought me through all this and continues to do so, and is kind of the overseer of the other parts, so that I'm in control now. Nobody is using me, nobody is, there's attempts at access remotely, and I'm thwarting all that at this point. I feel very protected in this unconditional, benevolent love energy that my higher self is very much connected to. It's a very real relationship with that. And in that, I haven't had to go in and meet every single altar or every single fragmented altar part and remember everything. I've remembered many, many things with them, meaning it's really not remembering. It's more like being presented, an altar's memory being presented to me for the first time, and me experiencing some part of that with that altar, being co-conscious with it, and realizing that it was our body, it was our being, but it was just a part of me that was participating in whatever is presented, or was being victimized in whatever was presented. Those memories involve abuse and programming, as well as our being sent out for what I call, or they call, on task. That's the words, was on task for some of the kill altars. And there appears to be approximately, at this point, I've discovered what appears to be 5 different kill altars, very different in their programming, their skill set, their mind capacity, their strength, their personality, even very different personalities, and very particular uses. There were other altars that were used for different things. I have one I call the Perfect Hostess, who was utilized in some type of gatherings and meetings, non-ritual setting, literally as a hostess of a huge party, or one of many other people were probably working there as well, but she interacted with what I would call people within this network who were aware that they were in the network. It was a very cognizant gathering for these individuals. And I believe one of the uses was, as far as the kill goes, it seems that a lot of those were my altars being utilized to take out members of the network that were deemed, and this is her words, deemed unfit for continued use or to be part of the network. Their time was up. And it seemed that many of those individuals that I recall were set up to have a sexual encounter, and then a kill altar was brought forward. And they were unaware, obviously, of what the setup was. I also have memories of not only killing solo, but being part of a 2-man team with a male individual, and then there's a larger group, and this is still very much in discovery, but there's a larger group that I'm connected to. I believe there are either 5 or 6 of us, and I'm the only female in that group. And I believe that, as I said, I'm still really coming to understand that we're connected in mind through technology, that there is literally some kind of hardware somewhere that we are all connected through, living apparently, or the appearance of different lives, possibly in different parts of the U.S. We don't know that they're all even in the U.S., but that I'm connected to them like a group. And I'm not sure I really understand what that is all about, but I have a very clear memory of, I believe it's 6, because I have a very clear memory or presentation of myself standing inside of 5 guys. there's some distance, and they're ironically in the shape, they're on the points of what would be a pentagram, you know, a 5-pointed star. And I'm in the middle, and I'm thinking that I need to get out, but they're all just standing with very blank, intense, almost malevolent look to their eyes. And oh, we have a visitor. I'm not going to play ball. A cute little dog just joined us, and I guess the owner too. So we'll just, hi. He so wanted me to throw that ball. All right, so this group that I'm speaking of, I think is really important to bring in, because I think this has a lot to do with the newer versions of technology and the trauma-based, what I would call trauma-based mind control, which is what was utilized on me to create multiple personalities and subsequent alters that can be used over a lifetime. But I think this 5 points of these people, these men around me, and that we're all linked, is something to do with remote technology and mind control, and I don't understand it. I know that I'm hooked to these guys, and that the feeling in the memory of me standing in the center and wanting to leave, and they were probably standing in this 5-pointed star around me, probably a good 20 to 30 feet out, each of them. It was they weren't next to me, and I think there was some revelation about how there's distance, is what I got. There's distance between us, meaning possibly physical distance in the world around us and where they're being used, but that we're all connected, and the feeling was I didn't know how to safely get out of inside that 5 points. So that's still very much in discovery. But in addition to that, when I talk about team kills, I'm actually referring to situations where I have memory in alter of being in certain locations, working with a group, that we're all quietly working together in public places to gain access to something. One of them feels to me very much like possibly an airport setting. It's multi-layered. I'm going up and down escalators, and there's stairs, and visually connecting with someone. Now, remind you, this is in my altar, so their consciousness is very different from this. And knowing when I see that person, we lock eyes. He locks eyes with me, I with him, and I turn around and follow him as if I've already, in this altar, been programmed and I know what I'm doing. Most of my altars aren't in that reasoning what's dangerous, what's not dangerous. They're just on task. They're just programmed to function and not inquire and think. And through the deep programming years, I have had many altar memory fragments that come forward where I'm being shown an altar in a situation, and for a brief moment she has a lucid moment of questioning what's happening around her, questioning that there's something, always the same, there's something wrong here, and then that's usually when her memory, that altar's memory, ends, as if another altar has now taken over, and that altar isn't presenting to me. And it's really tricky because many of my altars are very loyal still to their programming, the malevolent intention that I have. The executive part of me, the higher part of me, has shut them down for now. They're not able to function. I occasionally get glimpses, and I believe it will be an ongoing process to start to bring them out and heal so that they can be integrated, so to speak. But for now, they have no ability to take the body or the mind. It is ours. So, but in saying that, a lot of times what happens is a memory that is presented to me will, let's say that there's an event that went on all night, and let's say there were 3 altars that were pulled out to function at some point in that event. I may have one altar that wants to show me their part. So oftentimes what would happen is the memory would begin, or their memory would be being presented to me from whatever point. So it could be in the middle of the night. It could be in the middle of whatever was going on. So it's almost like your eyes open in the middle of a scenario. It's not like a movie from beginning, middle, and end. You may just get the middle piece or the end piece, whatever that altar was present for. And the other altars may or may not participate in the revelation. If they don't, I have a fragment. And with time, I began to learn after a couple of months of this that that's what was going on. And with time, sometimes that piece of presentation will happen, and then the last part that altar was present for won't really show it to me, but they'll kind of tell me how it ended. They don't want to show it and they don't want to relive it, but they'll just let me know what the end piece was. So it's this really fascinating process to go through. It's debilitating, it's exhausting, and it requires a lot of non-judgment, compassion, and empathy on my part, which took me a little while to really learn how to do that and be willing, because some of the presentations were just horrible. And I had to realize that these altars were ultimately, even the ones that became perpetrators, were victims first. There are no perpetrators without victimization first. And I began to see that with my own altars and felt kind of an automatic compassion for them, an automatic connection, because I was there. In one way or another, I was there. My body was there. The whole of my mind and my spirit wasn't, but I was there. And that began the process of acknowledging not only my victimization, but my resulting perpetration out of that victimization. And making the choice that was not okay. Now that I was aware, that was not okay, and it had to be stopped. And that's been, kind of the goal ever since, and it is an ongoing process. I do believe that I'm being born in 1962. I'm an old model, and many of the things that were utilized in my programming are probably very obsolete now. I've become more aware with research and some personal experiences, at night or during the day, of being tapped, and it feels very remote. I've gotten a couple of glimpses of things that I believe, this is what I believe about them with repeated experiences. And this is not every night, this is just on occasion, that there is still some kind of accessing attempt going on, that I'm still hooked into something. Although I feel very much in control of my and our lives now, but there is nonetheless attempts at probably trying to keep me destabilized or trying to bring fear out in me, what have you, and an occasional attempt at reprogramming just to see what they can do. I think at this point I've become pretty much the tail end of the experiment, is really it. Obviously at this age they're not at all, and for many years not really at all interested in using me sexually. The kill programming, I will say this, and I've met some others, it can go on a long time. If the skill set is still there and you're still under full programming, which I am not, the kill use can go on for many years. I've met one that was quite a bit older than me, and he was sharp. Let's see, talked about the books, any thoughts on what I might go from here?
Do you have any senses of smell along that trigger? I guess I'm trying to think of different triggers. Of course it could be anything, but smell just came to mind.
No, that's a good one. There are actually certain smells of certain individuals that when the smell would come back, I would see the person in my mind's eye, and my front altar would remember knowing that person, but for example, not remember, think that we never had sex, or if it was someone, no, I never had sex with that person. And then the memories would start to come back in of going into altar with that person, sounds, like, for example, certain sounds that certain male individuals made during arousal, certain smells, the look of someone's fingers up close, just really remembering their fingers, and the way that person smelled, the taste of someone's mouth, like the feel and taste of kissing them, deeply kissing them, and that sense of smell. And it's very disturbing. I mean, I could be driving down the road just in my everyday consciousness and it just floods in. So a lot of those things. And as far as triggers go, the first couple years of deep deprogramming were really rough because colors, words, symbols, people could say something and just a word, and a flood of something would come up. It's like a rush coming forward. And I began to realize that even shaking, sometimes when I talk about this, it's now subsided, but I get an internal vibration. And it took me actually probably a good year and a half, 2 years to realize that was an altar trying to push forward, because it wants to say something or present something. And I did a lot of shaking in the first few years. I felt like I was vibrating all the time. And now I can just kind of go through it and subside it, because, I'm, like I said, the higher part of me and this co-conscious group of those who want it out are in charge now. So, yeah, lots of triggers. Clothing. I often find tons of reinforcement and triggers in movies and music, and I find a resonance with certain altar parts that, like to listen to certain kinds of music. I really have to have a really broad range of music and clothing, and, this one wants to dress this way today, and that one wants to dress that way tomorrow, and it's more of an indulgence at this point. It's nothing harmful, it's nothing perverse or deceitful, it's just a preference, and I can give a little play there so that they're participating, the healthier ones are participating in our life now without having to, it's not a matter of cutting them off, it's a matter of integrating them in a way that's healthy. The time frame 28 to 33, I am very clear that this enhancement had to do with my kill programming, and that window whatever it was, we were used like, this is the way it feels, bam, 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 bam. We were used, bam, 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 in that window, and it is almost a complete blank. There's a few bits and pieces, like someone that was in my life, or a flash of memory with that person, but those are more normal, everyday memories, like things that everybody has. But the use time is, I believe, what kind of like a black hole consumed my memory of that, and I haven't been able to access it. I do feel trepidation about it, and there's reasons why that I'm not going to say on this particular piece. There are things I understand about me and what came about at the beginning of that 5-year period, and I'm not quite ready to publicly talk about that. It is in the book. It's in book 2. To the best of my ability, I'm getting more and more understanding, and I think that piece has a lot to do with that time frame. So it is coming, and then life picks up again kind of at 33, and that's when 32, 33, and that's when a lot of the memories were really being pushed into my conscious mind, but they were all long. I want to say that even as a kid, I remember things that I knew, and